A lot of film composers traditionally fairly sort of behind the scenes, and they stay behind the scenes. They might have a famous name, but you never really get a sense of them as a personality. But you also seem to combine it with being something of a character.
I had a strange, when I started out in the studios to play keyboards, I was like 11, 12. So I was with a generation who were like 40 and 50. So I felt like I was 40 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
Then one fine day when I look at the mirror, I said, I'm young. So that was an advantage to become a personality and
Yes.
to start in music videos and to have your own music also, rather than just being faithful to film directors, writing scores and stuff. So at that point, and in India, I think all the music is from films. And when Sony came into the picture, there were so many things collided at that time in 96, 97.
Mm-hmm. But when you set out as a youngster to make music, what did you have in your head, that you wanted to be in a group, you wanted to be a famous kind of star, or to be a serious composer?
I never thought I could compose. It took me ages to convince myself, and almost had to get the people's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And once they started loving my music, I said, oh, maybe I got something. And my first film, I was not sure that I could pull it off.
Yeah.
But the director was so encouraging. He said, no, sounds good. And then he was like, it's a constant doubt with every composer. And when you do something, you don't know whether it's good or bad, or you always need an opinion. And then you come to a conclusion when there's something true coming from your heart. And sometimes they don't like something that you do, and you believe in it, and you say, no, just live with it. And then they share the same opinion sometimes.
And I'm interested in what it was like growing up in India, and the attitude of the kind of music that I guess a lot of people are interested in when they're younger is from elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. My thing was, I was already in film music. I was playing that stuff day in and day out as a bread and butter. So my interest was always what is happening outside.
Yeah.
What is happening outside the shell, and how can you do music which could be that also in a way. So I was listening to completely stuff which was not connected with my work. And in a way it was a passion, and that became my bread and butter later.
Yes.
That helped me to go to that sensibilities which was bridging my people and that sensibility together.
And what were you looking out at?
I was listening to anything which was interesting, which would transport me. Like at that time, Hollywood film scores like John Williams stuff and Vangelis and Queen and Peter Gabriel and who else? And of course Qawwali stuff or Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. In fact, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan is one of the guys who made me feel that I could also sing. Because he had a very unusual voice, and he would just sing with passion. Yeah. And nobody cared about his vocal texture. It was his emotion. And because if you audition with that kind of voice to a person, said at that time, I would say, oh, that's very harsh. But then everything has its own truth within. And then if you bring it out, it becomes acceptable.
Now, you had a band, didn't you, when you were younger?
I was playing all kinds of bands.
Okay, so you were in bands. And what kind of sound did they have?
Initially, it was a cover band for bands like America, Rush, and Pink Floyd, and all that stuff. Yeah. Then we became a pop band. Then we did our own music called Roots. Whatever I composed and the band composed, and then it slowly became. I started writing commercials and stuff, which then I was completely isolated. I was a one-man band sitting, doing stuff, and that's when I built up my probably sensible and production. Sensibilities and all the stuff.
Did you get the sense that, as an Indian composer, as an Asian composer, the kind of music that you'd been listening to as a youngster, to join in with it, you were going to have to lose something of your own essence to move out, or did you want to sort of try and plan a way that you could keep your soul?
Yeah, no, that was a very complex thing in my mind. I never realized that. There's always a question. Why should they like my music? Or what should I do to be myself at the same time? But when I did Bombay Dreams, the same question came again. Why does Andrew Lloyd Webber like the music? So why does he want to produce the stuff? And then the question, so I should not be too English, because they're great English composers who can do that stuff. You should not be too Asian, because then people can't relate to it. Yeah. So how do you find the balance? And this constantly goes on your mind. And then finally you discover you don't have to try too hard. And when you just do and see what the vibe is when people hear it, that decides the thing, rather than you trying too hard and taking the truth away from the music.
When Danny Boyle asked you to do Slumdog Millionaire, were you wary that what he might have been looking for was a kind of tourism, if you like, you know, not the real thing, but a kind of version of the real thing that would be accessible and give a bit of glitter, but not actually be...
Not sitar and... Yes. No, I've been watching all kinds of films, like world films, and at least know a feel of what could work. It shouldn't be the run-of-the-mill thing, it should be special. And by the time you realize all that, you completed the soundtrack and it's all on screen. And I just realized that only when I was watching it in a couple of previews, when I realized that what the music was doing. So it is also the director's vision combined with your hard work and stuff put together, and when you see it, and the way he mixes it, like really loud. So there's so many factors which make the music stand out in a movie. Sometimes you do the best soundtrack, the best melody, and it's used like so much of effects, and it's like really closed, and people never feel that. And you feel very proud, I've done something good, and they say, where's the music? Sometimes you do something light, like Danny's thing I've finished in 3 weeks, and people say, oh, what great music you gave. So, really?
What, you thought because it was too quick it couldn't...
So, you know, when in your mind it's just that, it is the right things, I think.
And what in the end convinced you to do the film? What did Danny say to you that made you think that it was going to be an interesting project? That wouldn't sort of be a shortcut to emotion, would be the thing itself?
Well, I've been working with Indian directors, and they have a particular style, but really good for Indian audiences. But when you're working with someone from England, I know that there are little quirkiness in the mind, and the way they set up stuff is really, and I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. So when Danny came in, I wanted to work with the director, just even to learn the mindset of using application of music on films. And so my curiosity was more for that rather than doing a movie, an Indian movie with Danny Boyle. But as a payoff, there's so many good things which came in.
Sure,
So it's not for...
And all those things that have happened because of it, as you've been going along, was those kind of things you were hoping would happen, that you would, perform this kind of crossover, if you like, and be taken out of where people kind of had placed you and where you were, as successful as you were, into the world where you can start to compete with those kind of composers that you've been looking at?
Yes, after a point, you watch Hollywood movies, you watch other movies, and then you feel that it's all sounding the same sometimes, and what could you do to make... They're all doing great work, but as a formula, what happens after a point of time, it becomes tiring. Oh, it's all done, it's all perfect, it's all special effects, all great score, but what's... I think I personally feel that the more money they invest in a movie, the more insecure and the more the heart is taken away from music. There's a lot of temp music all over the place, and then by the time you see the movie is filled with all great scores, and then there's no music coming from the heart of what it really requires. And that's one disappointing thing which could change, and if you work with directors controlled films, that could change in that.
There's a perception that if say Indian music starts to become too much of a hybrid with outside music, it loses its essence.
It doesn't have to become hybrid.
Right.
Because there's no orchestral music, first of all, in India. Only movies have Indian music orchestral. And so that's one area which could be really, really exciting, because there's so many great instruments. In my opinion, the idea is to develop an Indian orchestra, which will probably having 20 sitars and 10 sarangis playing different parts. It can't happen if they can't read notes. If everybody starts improvising, it'll be a chaotic, so...
But I was just wondering if it's that sense of for whatever reason, the lazy Anglo-American ear was hearing something that was difficult. The sounds were difficult, and the traditions were difficult. They couldn't get into it, and then to soften it for Western ears, I'm wondering if it breaks its heart, if you like, it compromises its soul, or is it still possible to transmit the real flamboyance and
I mean, if you look at it scientifically, yeah, but if you look at it with the heart of a lot of people have done, but in pockets, and they've not been noticed. I think some of them, I know some of the musicians in Pondicherry who try to do beautiful fusion music, which you feel it's Indian, but still something else.
Yeah.
So it's not come to the mainstream yet, but there is something happening here.
And winning the Oscars and having such impact in that sense, even though obviously you were incredibly popular in your world, it's fascinating that again with that patronising element that we sort of, you know, almost greet you as a newcomer, even though you've been around for so long because you win the Oscars. But on the other hand, that's an interesting moment, I guess, because there you are, maybe 2 or 3 Asians have won Oscars before, probably costume or something. Or there you are in this mainstream. Was that always a tactical thing? Was there something that you wanted to do as part of your message, if you like, to unify East and West in a way that meant you were commercial in the West and not just as a sort
I was personally very frustrated that whenever there was a movie which went out of India and said, oh, it's gone for Oscar competition, and then every time, the only movie which in my lifetime, like Lagan got nominated, and the whole country was, oh, it's going to win, and it never won. And then again another movie went, and then you could see all the disappointed faces. So I never thought that I'm going to win one myself, but I thought somebody should win, the director or... And so this was that close. And so then I realized that it's so close, and then the vibe was so great that if we get the Oscar, it'll be like great for India.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. The whole India was celebrating almost a year.
Yeah.
They never let me in peace.
But is there a cultural sense of frustration that you feel dismissed? You know, it's like the rest of the world is dismissed as one thing, world.
Well, with English being the common language, and in fact we have so many languages in India that English is probably the one which bridges all of us. Me coming from the south, if I don't know Hindi, I would have been kicked out. But then English kind of saved me. So something is there which unifies it again.
Yeah.
And of course, the right time has to come for everything.
Yeah.
I guess it's coming now.
Yeah. Do you think we're getting so kind of bored and jaded with Western music that we're starting to? Yeah, I get the feeling people are starting to hear interesting new things, and they're not so put off as they were a few years ago.
Yes, and also I think the YouTube now doesn't have any barriers.
Yes.
And any kid in probably Iceland or in China or in India can become a broadcaster. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely
that's changed
been an advantage.
All the stuff, and the internet has changed everything.
Yeah, for the other musics that tended previously to be so
dismissed.
Anything
soothing to the ears is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Language or...
And you get to hear it now without it coming through the world filter. You just hear it as music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Again, going back to the idea of you being a personality in the sense that, you know, Time magazine, and then you become part of their, you know, top influential people. And again, that's really fascinating, the idea of a composer.
You know what happened was, back in India, there's always a kind of priority. If the group of people who see you, they all come to you with a lot of love. Oh, can I have an autograph? You have an actor come in, and then they all go to the actor. Because they have much more, pull. So, it's nothing wrong. I wanted to be in my space, but there came to the world was going through a kind of crisis where there was so much of hatred and all the stuff, and I was trying to bring my philosophy inside my mind outside, and the only way to do that was to do stuff go a little more, take one more step in a music video or saying about something what you feel, rather than just shutting up and keeping quiet. So that kind of probably had a better impact in complementing in music and as a personality, which I think was important to me.